1996, I smiled because although the Baptist Union of Great Britain has been ordaining women since about 1922, the first Black woman to be accredited as a minister in the Baptist Union of Great Britain was in 1996. Oh, so I found it really fascinating as you said that. So I wonder, with you having told us a bit of background information as to your context, something of your own personal journey as to how you became an ordained Baptist minister in Jamaica.
Well, I am one of those persons who actually grew up in church and was really integrally involved in the life of the church from as early as I can know myself, as I can remember myself. But I never really contemplated becoming a pastor. It was really not the kind of model I saw around me then, having been really just the third woman to be ordained. So, and the other denominations, I did not see much of that existing anyway. But then I sensed at a point in my life that God was actually calling me to serve the church as a pastor. And when I sensed this, I really struggled. I was not excited at all. It really was not my desire. I had no such plans. But I was always a Christian who, every day of my life, I would pray, Lord, let your will be done in my life. Let your will be done. And so when I sensed this call, I felt that it would have been really difficult for me to continue. I'm sorry, I seem to have gotten cut off. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Yes, yes. I'm sorry about that. I actually took this from home just to make sure, because my internet is actually more stable at home than at the office. Yes, I was actually in the process of talking about my call, and I wanted to say it was very helpful that when I indicated this sense of call to my pastor and to others, that I got nothing but endorsement and support. So that was very helpful in paving the way for my eventual application and acceptance within the JB. I'm back, actually.
Oh, she's back.
Okay,
yes, I'm using my phone hotspot now. Hopefully that will be better than what I was using before. Okay, so I'm not sure if you heard all of what I said, but I was saying that it was helpful that my pastor and the wider church community was very supportive when I indicated that I had sensed this call, and really got no pushback. But people were really happy that I had made this decision, having themselves sensed that this is a direction that God was calling.
Okay, so for you, it seems fairly straightforward, but just asking you a bit more about what you think some of the challenges are that some women have faced in your context, and how you think they've overcome some of those challenges.
Well, yes, I think that there is still quite a bit of pushback as it relates to accepting women serving as pastor. I think it's okay for many people, in my context, for women to serve in the church. So we have, I think in our congregations, about 75% of our congregants are women, and they serve at various levels in the church. But I think when people contemplate women in leadership roles, assuming certain levels of authority, it becomes a different kettle of fish. I think we are still very patriarchal. We still assign certain gender roles to people. We assume that there are certain things women should do and there are other things men should do. And we struggle, many people struggle with accepting a woman to be a pastor in a congregation. And even when women are accepted, even when people say yes, even when calls are extended, women are often treated differently from men. The expectations are greater. It is expected that women will work twice as hard. The errors that are made by male ministers and overlooked, that is not the case with women. When a woman exercises strength and authority and command in carrying out their responsibilities, they are seen as aggressive and insensitive. But when a man exercises the same kind of authority, they are lauded. So I think we are still struggling. We still have a long way to go. People are still being placed in boxes. I think the voices of women are still not being heard as it ought to be heard. And I think a lot of it, sadly, it is not even related to doctrinal positions. I actually did a study on patriarchy in the church, an assessment of the leadership of women in the Jamaica Baptist Union when I did my master's program. And what I found was that the perceptions were really cultural for the most part. Very few people cited any kind of doctrinal position that caused them to hold the positions they hold in terms of not supporting women in ministry. It is really about culture more than anything else. And as we know, culture and traditions, those things do not change overnight. It is really a long road.
So you've begun to touch on your master's in gender studies.
Yes.
How would you say that particular that study has shaped your thinking and practice as a minister, and how do you think it's contributed to you arriving at the place of being General Secretary of Jamaica Baptist Union?
Well, I think I have always been concerned about justice generally, and have had strong opinions about gender justice from when I was a child. When I look back, I'm amazed at some of the positions I took even while in high school. I told myself I wasn't going to do the typical home economics, and I found myself doing things like woodwork and electrical installations and so on. And so actually getting to the place of doing a program of study was very deliberate, because I feel so strongly about the issue. I felt that it was important not just to feel strongly, but to be in a position to do more. And I felt that the more informed I was, the better placed I would be in order to participate in the conversations, in the discussions, and to advance the whole quest for gender justice. And so that's really what led me to do the program, the passion I have always had, and feeling that the more equipped I am in terms of understanding the various issues and having the language and that people take you more seriously sometimes when you are able to articulate the issues that you want to raise or to see change taking place around. In terms of how it has helped me, I think it has increased my passion for the issue. It has allowed me to engage in the dialogue more deliberately. It has caused me to look at scriptures even more intentionally, bearing in mind the whole dialogue around gender in ways I probably didn't look at it before, although the program I did really was not a theological program. But nevertheless, I found that it certainly helped in terms of increasing my own awareness, in terms of allowing me now to be able to speak from a certain standpoint, which I never spoke from before. And I think it has also helped me to make some specific recommendations to the JBU. For example, the need to develop a gender policy, having had to work with and work through gender policies I was able to make that recommendation to the union. The need for us to document fully the road to the ordination of women in the JBU, because we still have not done that. You know, we came to the position, but all that were involved is still unknown to the wider JBU community. We still have not done the education that we need to do. So we have trained women, we have made it possible for them to serve in churches. But the general constituency, many people still are unaware of how we got to this place. They are unaware of the theological basis. And so the questions are still being asked. And I think that the training that I have received certainly has placed me in a position where I am able to be a lot more deliberate. And I think now that I have become General Secretary, being in a position where I can influence policy, the decision making, implementation, and so on, I think this will certainly go a far way in helping us to advance the journey.
So in many ways, you have quite a unique viewpoint. You are General Secretary of the Jamaica Baptist Union. You serve on the World Council of Churches. So you have that kind of ecumenical, sort of global view. So also your studies, gender studies, you are, as is often said, very, very well read and studied in that area. So bearing those things in mind, and your extensive experience as a minister in Jamaica as well, let's not forget that. Your travel to places like the UK, as I say, the influence you've had on me. With that kind of perspective, what do you think are the most pressing issues if we are to continue to make progress on this issue of women in leadership in our churches?
Well, I think we will have to be a lot more deliberate and intentional in terms of increasing awareness around the issue. I think sometimes, well, certainly in my context, we shy away from the discussion. I think we have to, and in being intentional, we have to develop strategies, which I would want to raise the strategy of gender mainstreaming as one of those strategies. And really what this is really a methodology, a way of ensuring that we incorporate pretty much in everything that we do. The institutions, the ideology that we have, the structures that are in place, that we include ways in which we can achieve gender justice. And I think that is a very big thing, because unless we ensure that we develop these strategies in order to achieve gender justice, we will continue to just, I'd say, talk around the issue and not necessarily integrate anything specific in terms of action and policies. So I'd say that is certainly one of the pressing issues. I mentioned earlier the matter of education. I think also in terms of, there is a lot of debate around this in terms of whether or not we take deliberate steps, for example, to ensure that a certain percentage of women are in certain places. And I suppose people have different perspectives on that. But I think that until we become more deliberate in doing so, in ensuring that women are on certain committees, ensuring that there's really no space where it is all male dominated when the issues concern both women and men. So I think we are still at the place where it is possible for our officers board, for example, to be all women, all men. Well, it could be all women, but less likely. Because we have no system that says a certain percentage or at least one of the vice presidents should be a woman. So it's quite possible for us to have a leadership team where it is all male. And I think those are things that we have to deliberately fix, because assuming that things will just fall into place has not really taken us very far, I believe. So I think the need for education, I think the need for gender mainstreaming, I think the need for raising awareness, those are some of the things, and advocacy, of course. Those are some of the things I would highlight as being pressing.
And so, conscious of our limited time, I want to sort of get you to speak more into the area of young people, young adults, and how we progress this area with them, recognizing, you said yourself, as a young child, you had a strong sense of justice around gender. I have to say, I was the same, and certainly some of the stuff I wrote at school, my creative writing, I think certainly challenged my teachers as I demanded women's rights at a very young age. So what do we do for our young men, young women, your views, your point of view as to what we need to be doing with them?
I think we have to engage them in the conversation. Again, referring back to my studies, I was very surprised when I discovered that our young people, at least those that were involved in the study, were actually figured very highly in terms of the percentage of people who thought that women should not be ordained. That was very shocking for me, because I know that so much has changed, and in many respects, young people are actually leading trends and thoughts and so on, but found that they actually, in many ways, well, we socialize them, right? So a lot of them are still very, very patriarchal, and they're patriarchal because this is how we have taught them through our the Sunday school, through our youth-related engagement at church. And so we have to do, I think, a relearning. We have to assist our young people in terms of a relearning. I don't know, probably in the UK it might be a little different. But I was really very taken aback at the very strong patriarchal views a number of our young people still hold. And therefore, I think the education and the consciousness raising and the attempts in terms of the liberation, and I think just taking them along in terms of the advocacy and modeling more for them.
Okay, I have to say, Merlyn, as someone that works with young adults, I would also say I initially found it quite surprising how many people, younger people in our churches, hold those kind of patriarchal views. And I think it does surprise people when you work amongst the certain communities. It is surprising, those views are held. I don't know how we're doing for time, Helen and Jane, but I'm wondering, are we at the point where Merlyn needs to give her question to the...
That would be wonderful, thank you.
Okay, Merlyn.
Okay. All right, so the question that I have is around the issue of gender mainstreaming, and here goes. What strategies can you employ in your context to further gender justice through gender mainstreaming? What strategies can you employ in your context to further gender justice through gender mainstreaming? And we remind ourselves that gender mainstreaming is really the quest through addressing institutions, structures, policies, the culture, in order to ensure that we get to a point where we have a more just society as far as gender justice is concerned. It's not a destination. It is gender mainstreaming, that is. It's not a destination, but it's really a strategy that we employ. So what it is that you can do in your context in terms of gender mainstreaming. So that's essentially the question.
Thank you. Thank you for that really stimulating question. We're going to put you into small groups now to have that conversation.
So welcome back, everybody, and we do invite you just to take a moment just to type in the chat box Or if you've got other notes that you want to share, feel free to drop us an email, but it'd just be good to hear and see the comments coming through. And I will move on in a moment to share an update on next steps for Project Violet for these last few minutes. So the chat will remain open. I'm just going to share my screen and just say a little bit more about the next steps for Project Violet. So as I said earlier, we have a number of co-researchers as part of Project Violet. We now have 17 co-researchers, which we think is quite amazing. Women Baptist ministers. Our group 4 co-researchers you are hearing for the first time this evening. We are privileged to announce we have Ruth Guke, who's a Baptist minister for Christ the King Community Church. And Ruth is reflecting on acquiring a disabling condition as a woman Baptist minister, a reflection. Our second co-researcher in this group is Denise Dobe. She's also a minister, as are all our co-researchers of Dark House Baptist Church. And Denise will explore women's experience of how the menopause, I'm just moving my screen so I can see it. Oops, forgive me. Reflecting on women's experience of how the menopause impacts on ministry and how Baptist institutions respond. Laura Gilmore. Laura is chaplain for Strathcarron Hospice and member of Hillhead Baptist Church. And Laura will explore of how caring responsibilities across the life cycle impact and shape the ministry and experiences of women in Baptist ministry. And our last co-researcher in this group is Susan Myatt. Susan is Minister of Open Hands Signing Church, a location of Rising Brook, Stafford, and National Deaf Advisor in the Heart of England Baptist Association. Susan is also seconded 1 day a week as Deaf Advisor for Lichfield Diocese. And Susan will be exploring the journey into and potential barriers deaf women face in ministry within the Baptist Union. So as you can see, I hope a great depth and breadth of research in terms of this particular group. All the other co-researchers are named on our website, and the address will follow in a moment. Alongside this, we have an ecumenical endeavour called Receptive Space. So we are collaborating with something called Receptive Ecumenism Project. We have a number of our Baptist ministers involved in this. Sally Nelson, Dean of Baptist Formation of St Hild College, and Alison Evans, Chaplain and Secretary at Society for Ecumenical Studies. And this project will exchange the gifts and challenges of ministry with women from other traditions. So we are meeting with a number of women later this year, and that will be a conference for 1 day in November in the north of England. We've just heard today that there is a book on its way, and this will be released next week, I believe, on Amazon. This is published by Chris Vogue, A Woman Shall Do It, Edith Gates, Neglected Pioneer. If you don't know who Edith Gates is, again, go to our website, but she was the first woman to be recognised as being in pastoral charge of an English Baptist church in the Baptist Union, and that book will be released next week. And lastly, our next seminar for Project Violet will be in November 2023 this year, and this will be a briefing on the final phase of Project Violet how the findings will be released and how during the course of 2024 you will be able to respond to them. So we'd love for you to come back and join us. We'll be doing publicity nearer the time and encouraging people to engage. This is going to be a really important part of this final phase as these findings from all our 17 co-researchers will be released. That won't happen in November, but we will share the phase with you because it is a process, and we'd love you to join with us and engage. And this is where you can find us, and we look forward to further engagement. Helen.
Thank you, Jane. It's my pleasant duty to bring the evening to an end by thanking you all for coming. Particularly, I want to thank Gale Richards for interviewing our guest, Merlyn Hyde-Riley, and to say what a privilege it's been to have a woman leader from another union come and join with us. And we thank Gale for the way in which she's drawn out what we can learn from Merlyn's experience. The Centre for Baptist Studies puts on a range of events, of which this is one type of event, and so we're delighted when members of the Baptist community join in with what we're trying to do at Regent's Park College. And I just want to echo with Jane, we really look forward to your ongoing engagement with us, and we hope that you'll come and hear about how you can take part in discerning the findings of the project during 2024 when we provide that briefing in November. But I think that's all we need to say this evening. We usually thank Angie Bryant and Hannah Fleming Hill, who are on screen, who are our attendance angels who support us in our endeavours. But we want to just thank you for taking the time out this evening and coming. So feel free to go, or feel free to leave some response in the chat. But our session is over.